my name's Juliet, and today I'm talking about what you need or what you could put in the front matter of your book, and whether or not it's a good idea, for both paperback and ebook. There are many things that can be included in the front matter of a book, as defined by traditional publishers, but do you actually need them in yours? And should they even be in the front matter, or could they be put in the back matter? Well, if you want your book to feel like the majority of books people are used to, you don't want to go too far off track. But there is quite a lot of flexibility. However, there are some items that you have to include for your own protection, such as copyright, and to comply with retailer requirements. Before you decide on anything, though, the most efficient way to put your book together is to have the same information, in the same order, in both your paperback and ebook. Otherwise, managing your manuscript could get complicated. Having the placing set will definitely save you time. However, you still might have to have slightly different versions for paperback and ebook. This isn't a problem because at some point, no matter what software you're using, you'll have to generate two different files. I think there are two main things you need to consider before including anything specific to this world of independent publishing, but that also impinge on other global concerns. Number one is about paperbacks. With every extra page you include, it increases the cost of your book's production, and, of course, uses more paper. There are no economies of scale for print on demand. Each book has a set price. Having extra pages has implications for your selling price and for the environment. You need to decide how you feel about these things before proceeding. If you only sell a handful of copies, which hopefully won't be the case, it won't have a lot of impact. If you sell hundreds or thousands, that impact will become greater. Number two is about ebooks. Most retailers provide a book sample. If you include a vast amount of front matter, there will be less of a true sample of your book's content for the potential reader. Stuffing with front matter is not a good way to stop people getting what you might think of as free content. If they can't get a decent sample, they might not buy. If they get a good sample they love, the result could be very different. So, what are those things you might see in the front of a traditionally published book? A paper book is our basis for these, as that's where they originate from. Unless I say otherwise, all of these appear on a right-hand facing page in a paper book. First is the half-title page. It simply means only the title, without the author name or any subtitles or any publisher details, but otherwise displayed as a normal title page, which is generally centered text. Sometimes you might find an illustration on the back of this page, or it could be left blank. Then there is the true title page. Yes, two title pages, one after the other. This has, as a minimum, the details of the title, the author, and publisher. Usually this information is centered. Some books include other details. On the back of the title page you'll usually find the copyright page. This is also centered, and the type is usually smaller than the main text for the book. This will have a copyright statement, and traditional publishing floods this with a whole load of coding about editions and publication details, certainly in the UK, that means nothing to anyone not in the know. What it must include, though, is the ISBN if it's a print book. If you have your own ebook ISBN, you can put that here in that edition. Otherwise, where ebook distributors require it, they will often offer and attach a free ISBN digitally, so you don't need to worry. You must not use your paperback ISBN in your ebook. They are different editions and need different ISBNs. Other elements that are to do with copyright might also be included on this page, say those of an illustrator, for example. A dedication might come next. It's always on its own and often centered, but not always, and appears a short way down the page. It's also frequently in italics. There might also be an epigraph, which is a quotation. Format for this would depend on what it was. Then come the contents features, which for many books will just be a table of contents, but could, in non-fiction, have lists of figures, illustrations, and tables as well. These will usually be set out with the element on the left and leader dots to the page number on the right. The text here might be smaller than the normal font for the book in a paperback. E-books must have a contents page, or your book won't be accepted. After that, well, some front matter contains acknowledgements, but I think the front of a book is a bad place for that, so I'm not going to consider it here. However, there might be any of the following before the book proper starts: foreword, preface, introduction, and prologue. The first three are usually only found in non-fiction. A foreword is a contribution by someone else, often an expert in the subject, and their name and the date are included at the end of the piece. Whereas the preface is something written by the author, which often is about why they're writing it, and is also named and dated. The introduction is more of what this book is about, and I would consider it part of the book proper, and personally would put it in the book as such. And finally, a prologue is, I suppose, putting a fiction work into context, with usually a scene before the main action, often a very long time before the action. I would also put this in the book. What do I mean by in the book? Well, you can have another half-title page before the main content of the book starts, and I'd put the introduction or prologue after that. You may choose differently. Now, in traditional paperbacks, a lot of this front matter can be numbered with Roman numerals, but honestly, it gets very complicated with which pages are numbered and which aren't, and I don't think it's worth the effort. What it mustn't be is numbered with the same numbering system as the main text. So let's think about these elements. You can include whatever you want apart from one or two requirements, but here are my thoughts. I guess perhaps a half-title page at the beginning was somewhere for the author to sign, but I think it's a waste of paper. Most independent publishers won't have an illustration to put on the back, unless it's a map, and I think I'd include that closer to the main text, possibly on a half-title page right before the book starts. It is also a complete waste in an e-book, because most of them jump to the first page of the book, and it may never even be seen. You do, however, need a title page and a copyright page, so that's where I'd start. However, in an e-book, I would combine the two, with a title at the top of the page and the copyright information beneath it. Once again, many people will never even see this in the e-book. Then would be the dedication and/or epigraph. I think one or the other is enough here. Otherwise you are wasting paper in a paperback, because the reverse is usually blank. I have an idea where else you could put the epigraph for the book. That would be more a part of the narrative as such. Contents comes next, and it will take as many pages as it takes. Some people put these at the back of ebooks, and over the years I've come to believe that doing that is a mistake. It feels wrong when you're reading a book, and even if it's in the sample for an ebook, especially for non-fiction, it gives people an overview of the contents that they wouldn't otherwise have. Then we get all those extra, sometimes wordy sections. As I've already said, I would put the introduction or prologue actually within the book. I think that's where they belong. If you have a foreword or a preface, my feeling is that they should be short. If I'm honest, I rarely read either of these, because I just want to get into the content of the book. And when it comes to ebooks, it stops people getting a proper look at the content in their sample. Would an afterword or an author's note at the end be better? Next, I would consider putting a half-title page before the main text, but modified if necessary. You could have a half-title page with your epigraph beneath it, or over the page, which keeps it connected to the piece it's giving you context for. You could have your map or other illustration on the back of this page. So those are my thoughts on what you might include in your front matter. In the end, it's totally up to you what you do, but I hope I've given you a few things to think about. Next Sunday, I'll start on back matter, and that video will be linked at the end of this one once it's live.